Hello everyone, the Tech Shack is here. If you were familiar with my previous videos, you would know that I had two houses, two homes, an apartment and a house. The plan was to build an addition on the house and build a new home lab there, and then move HomeLab3, which was the home lab in the apartment, to office space and use that to run my business out of. People who were renting me the office space actually didn't own the building yet, and they still haven't officially closed on the building and the lease on HomeLab3, and that apartment is up and we had to be out. And then we couldn't get a contractor fast enough to even break ground on the addition yet. So it looks like, despite having the funds, I cannot find a contractor that could break ground this year. So we had to come up with a bedroom for the second wife, and I needed office space. So we bought two of these cabins, two identical cabins. Now if you notice, we have Starlink, and another thing I mentioned in my last video was I was waiting on fiber. Well, so right here is where fiber stopped. They went all the way down this dirt road where almost nobody lives. They ran the rest of the run down here all the way around the other side of this horseshoe of a road. They left enough up by across from every house and near every house to run enough spooled up on the poles, so if they want to run, it's right there ready to go. But they did not finish the run to do our house, the last house on the road. See, despite the fact that you can see the house right there, so they would have had to run to that last telephone pole, terrible, and across to where the HomeLab building is. So this final little run would have been close to $5,000 because they didn't want to run it for us. Thank you, Daddy Elon, for coming to the rescue. So that actually might have been a blessing in disguise, though, because most of my neighbors that do have slick have had a lot of issues, like almost daily droppages just randomly. Whereas this, I haven't even had any outages at all in a month, and I'm getting between 200 and 300 megabit. The lowest I've ever seen is 178 megabit, and the fiber company only offered 100 megabit sequential. Actually, no, now they offer up to 200 megabit sequential, but that was still about $40 more a month than what Starlink was. The 100 megabit sequential would have been $100 a month, so $10 more a month I was paying for Starlink. Would have obviously a much faster upload and a much lower latency, but a much slower download, actually anywhere from a half to a third of the speed. Very, very happy with Starlink, to be perfectly honest. So then, this guy here, this is CPE 710 by T-Link. This is a CPE 710 by TP-Link. There we go. Now this guy here is capable of 800 megabits on the wireless, or 866 megabits on the wireless, and it has a gigabit wired port in it, so I'm able to shoot close to a gigabit several kilometers. Now that shoots Wi-Fi down to here, to this one, which then runs to our PoE switch in the utility closet that feeds this, and two additional access points for the house. I will say though that the CPEs only use passive PoE, whereas the Omada TP-Link access points are passive or active, which means that in order to use these with a PoE plus switch, you need the inline converter that does the negotiation, because passive PoE doesn't negotiate. And this one here also feeds off that CPE 710. These are 510s again. These are 5 gigahertz, but they only do 300 megahertz, or they only do 300 megabit, and they only have 10100 ports. Yes, I know I need to cut the zip ties off it, but I literally just hung that an hour ago, a couple hours ago. That goes underneath there to the other wife's cabin, where she has her own access points. And now what my single digit viewers have been waiting to see, let's go on inside. Get the Ring doorbell. Initially this was all going to be nice Amish wood on the inside like the outside. I insulated it. Got the electrical in, lights in. But I ran out of time. The lease in the old place was up. So I threw these up temporary, and I kind of like them, so they're going to stay. The only thing that's going to get changed is the peaks. I am going to swap those out for orange or black ones. And the insulation for the roof is on its way. So that's about all that's left, is the insulation for the roof and the exhaust vent in the peak, and to put a new tarps over the peaks. I use old pallet boards for trim. And this light and this cell phone don't really like each other. Adjust the exposure. There we go. Maybe that fixed it for now. Alright, but starting here, we got the Pi Station, Pi 400, running Ubuntu. I've tried just about every OS out there on it. My kids really liked FidoOS, but then they put that behind a paywall. Prime OS is great if you want to use it as an Android gaming PC. But they all seem to have a weird glitch. Something didn't work right. And as far as a general purpose OS and a full desktop experience, I really feel like Ubuntu is probably the most polished. I got to put that heater in still, so that's probably going to be one section of the wall that is going to be finished. It's going to be under that window. That's going to be all done up in faux brick. Then you have the first workbench here. Another thing I'm going to point out is, if you notice where the panel box is mounted and how all these monitors are mounted at this weird height, that is because, just like the ceiling, this entire thing is framed in 4x4s. So that's where the center 4x4 went. Like this wall, there is one vertical one, and on this wall there's 3 vertical ones, and they all have 3 horizontal 4x4s across the top, across the bottom, and across the center. So while this thing is built like a tank, it doesn't make it easy to do any sort of electrical wiring, but I don't really think that was a priority when the Amish built it. So this is my main workbench. The air conditioner, the printer underneath it, and then just a bin of crap I haven't gone through. Air compressor to blow out nasty computers. 3 different drills and all my batteries. And then this whip, it goes to the monitor, so I have VGA, HDMI, actually it's DisplayPort adapter on it now, but so I can plug everything I need to into that monitor. And then a USB extension that basically just goes to the dongle to that wireless keyboard and mouse, so I don't accidentally leave the dongle in a computer. Especially if it's a client's computer, that's not a good time. And over here I have the server stack. This is the server stack from HomeLab3. HomeLab1 pretty much got dismantled and parted out. I gave my cousin one of the workstations. Most of it got given away. It wasn't sold. The later generation Optiplexes I was using for like my router and for my data recovery PC was given to my kids because it was honestly overkill. Data recovery PC, I have a 4th gen, which is actually better because it has more 3.5-inch drive bays, so I'm able to run 2 HS GT Ultrastar drives in RAID 1, and then it's boot SSD and an optical drive. And then my server stack. Ooh, the power had gone out today, so the RGB reset. Let's fix that. I actually plugged in the RGB strips in these to the DOM headers, USB DOM headers inside of these. These are all Xeons. So this one's a V1 and the bottom one's a V3. So we have a 2690 V1 and a 2690 V3. One with 32 gigs of RAM, one with 6. I think I'm 128 now on that bottom one because RAM got cheap. 2.5 gig networking. My top one, RX 5600 XT. I mean, basically go back and watch the HomeLab3 video and you'll see all the specs on that machine. So the same 2.5 gig switch, I just added a little 8 port underneath it. I had a 16 port, but I gave that away too because I really didn't need it. And the person I gave it to is the one who this little Pi here belongs to. So this is the other workbench here. I got a Pi 4, 8 gig. Going to be set up as a NAS for Jesse, for his friend of mine, for his first ever home server. It's the second workbench. And it kind of acts as a divider because I do have clients that sometimes come here for consultations. So this kind of acts as just a natural, like, hey, you stay back there and that's where you sit. Sure, there's a million things I'm forgetting. But I am sure I am far from done anyway. But this is a massive upgrade from trying to run your office out of an apartment that you were renting. And it's also a massive upgrade from the office trailer that we had here before that was HomeLab3. But that's it for now. I'll see you next time back here at the Tech Shack.